Hi Spin Sisters, it's Val here from Ridley's, also a member of the club. Welcome to Tech Tuesday. Today I'm going to take you through the wonderful world of suspension setup on your bike. So we're going to go through setting up the front shock, rear shock, and then I might go through a little bit brake lever setup, saddle height, and dropper post setup at the end. Okay, so I'm trying to get some good angles here, but it's kind of hard. I live in a little house. So things you're gonna need for this. Handy things to have. A shock pump. Definitely need this to set your own suspension. This is different than a regular tire pump. We are dealing with a much smaller vessel holding a much higher, if you can see that at all, pressure inside of it. So please don't try to use your regular pump on this. You won't get the PSI high enough. Shock pumps are your friend. Okay, so we're going to go through the suspension components, starting with the front fork. So we have what's called the lowers of the front fork, and what's called the stanchions. Basically what we're concerned about with setting up our suspensions is these two pieces working together, stanchions compressing inside of the lowers. You'll also have this little ring sometimes, or a little graph here that will kind of help you as an indicator as to how much this is compressing based on how much PSI is in your front fork. So other parts of the front fork, let's see if I can turn this way. We've got a little cap here. Undo that, and in the side there is going to be your air valve. That's where we're going to attach our shock pump and adjust our PSI. On the other side here, I'm going to lean the bike. We have what is called a compression adjustment, or you may hear the term damper. So this is where you can adjust how much compression you're going to be using. This one, as you go up in the spec quality of forks, you just get more adjustment. So mine has an open setting, a medium trail setting, and then a closed lockout setting. It also has this little dial, which is called high speed and low speed compression. Again, it's just more adjustability when you're out on the trail. Low speed kind of meaning sort of a smaller succession of bumps, maybe using the first part of your fork for compression, and high speed, the bigger bumps. We're not going to worry about that at the moment. That's good questions for your mechanic or salesperson at a bike shop. And even though I could get into it, we only have so much time. On the other side, here, I'll just put this a bit lower. Mine has another cap here. There is a little red dial. This is your front rebound adjustment. We'll get into rebound a little bit later. Moving to the rear. Be a little closer. On the other side, there's a little cap here on mine that is your air valve. So again, where we're going to attach the shock pump. Red dial, rebound adjustment on the rear. That's your rate of return on your shocks. So how fast or how slow it's going to bounce back. On the other side, I have the same, kind of hard to see here, this blue dial, which is my compression settings. So again, same as the front, I have on this one I have a lockout, a medium trail setting, kind of halfway, and then I have fully open. Lots of fun things to play with. Again, we have the stanchion and then our chamber, and not all rear shocks will have this. Mine has this dual chamber on it. So if you go on pretty rugged terrain or really long days out there, what can happen is there's oil chambers inside of your shock. That oil heats up, so your shock may perform differently at the beginning, middle, end of a ride because that's moving and all that friction is giving the oil inside different performance. This is just an additional oil chamber to help with cooling and regulating the shock. Again, I have a little ring here that helps me determine how far one piece is compressing into another, and we're going to use that for measuring our suspension setup. Okay, now we are going to do everybody's favorite thing, mathematics, but it's really simple. So we're going to start with the front fork. So basically, there's a pretty simple formula for the front. When we're talking front versus the rear, your rear takes a lot more of your weight, and the front doesn't take as much. So formula for that we're going to employ is your rider weight. Oh my gosh, this is going to be all be backwards, so let's just get rid of this. Your rider weight plus gear, because we want to account for the weight of our clothing, the water we carry, tools, a pack, etc., etc. Divide that by 2, and then add about 10 psi. So let's say I weigh 150 pounds. I carry about 10 pounds of gear with me. Brings me to 160. Divide that by 2. We've got 80. Put a little extra in just to start out for ballpark's sake. 10. I'm going to pump my front up to 90 psi. So I'm grabbing my handy shock pump. I've already got the cover off. Let me just fix this a bit. Going to attach this onto the valve. Something really important here. Make sure the shock is open. Your compression setting is open. Otherwise, you're not going to get the right amount of air in there. So with this knob open, and then just going to pump away. Takes a little while. Okay, most shock pumps also have a little valve on them so you can release air out of here. Let me show you what that's like. It's a little button. So if we need to adjust later, it's gonna be pretty easy. All right. Okay. So on to the rear. I had to turn my bike around here because the valve is on the other side. Different mathematical setup for the rear. So for this, we want to take our full body weight plus our gear, and then add 10 to 15 psi on top of that. So a lot more goes into the rear. So say I'm 150 pounds, carry 10 pounds of gear, and then I'm going to add 10 to 15 psi. So I want to pretty much pump this up to about 170, 175. All right, let's move down here. Again, make sure your suspension is open. Mine has a little cap here. And yours should too. Could have got that off ahead of time, but thanks for waiting. Thread on our shock bunk. And then you pump away. So it's important to note that this is just kind of a ballpark formula. We're going to kind of test the theory next, and you may adjust your suspension based on how you ride, what kind of trails you ride, but we'll talk a little bit more about that after. So now we're going to test the theory. On my bike, as I mentioned before, I have these little black rings that slide up and down the stanchion. Some bikes may have a little graph here, a little ruler type graphic that'll kind of show you sort of the same area we're looking to get it in. If you don't have that or the rings, you may need to enlist a partner to kind of just like hold their thumb there to kind of see where it ends up, or you could maybe take just a light pencil and mark it. Well, your partner was probably going to have to mark it, and then you can just wipe it off later. So we're going to place this ring down at the bottom where the stanchion meets the lowers, and on the rear, hard to see here, we're going to slide that little black ring all the way up. I'm going to move my bike back. So if you have a partner that can help you with this, best thing to do is to just get them to stand with the front tire between their legs, holding the handlebars, so they can support your weight on the bike. Again, we want to make sure we have all of our compression settings set to open. For accuracy's sake. Now, if you wanted, I guess you could get your gear on and get a pack on with water, etc., etc. But as we're learning that this is just a jumping off point, and that you may adjust once you've ridden the bike a few times and got a better feel for how you like it, I wouldn't be too worried about it at this point. Now, if you don't have a partner to enlist, what you're going to do is get on the bike, hold on to a fence, a countertop, and you don't want to sit on the bike. Get the pedals in a level position. Get onto the brakes. Move this over a little bit. Now you're going to stand on the bike, hang on, and then you're just going to give the bike a little bounce. Not a really hard bounce. So when you get off the bike, how graceful. Do a graceful dismount. Do not sit on the bike. If you sit on the saddle, you're just going to put a little bit too much compression in that area and not enough in the front, and therefore you're going to result in sort of an inaccurate reading. Let's take a look at where we've ended up here. So what we're concerned about is how far this compressed down. And this is what my marker here is showing me. We're looking to get in this 25-30% range. So if you want, you can employ some math again. Get a tape measure. I have about 16 centimeters here, a full stanchion, compressed to just about 3 centimeters. So I want that to go compress a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is attach my shock pump again and let a little bit of air out of it to get it where I want it. Moving to the back. I've got my little marker here. The full length of my rear stanchion is about 6 centimeters. I found that this went down a bit too low. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit more air into my rear shock and get that a little bit more firm. Now, I have certainly found, based on my own experience and helping a lot of female customers, that we weight our bikes a lot differently than men do. So I find that I run my front fork a little bit lower on the PSI side just because we don't have the same like muscular build and use as much upper body strength. So I tend to run that a little bit lower, especially if I'm taking some like steeper, more technical descents. I kind of like the added feel of compression. And even though bikes are made women specific, if you go that route, sometimes it's all personal. So don't be afraid to play around with that. And if you don't exactly fit into this mold, that's okay. But basically, your rebound is your rate of return on your shocks. So there is a fast setting and a slow setting. It's usually marked out, pretty user-friendly. If your rebound's set too fast, you're going to feel like you're being sort of jolted and bucked off your bike when you go over a succession of bumps or a big hit. A lot of this is based on sort of rider proportions, weight, riding style, so don't be afraid to play around with this a bit. If it's set too slow, your shock's not going to react very fast. Sometimes you may even hear sort of like a sucking sound coming from it. It'll be kind of sluggish. So to set them, front and back's the same principle. You basically dial it down to one end. You listen and count how many clicks are in the full dial of it, and then you basically count halfway back to the middle. And that's a good place to start with it. So we'll just turn it. I know already that I have 15 on my rear shock, so I'm just going to set it back to about 7 or 8 and then adjust as needed. Here's your rebound adjustment for the front. You employ the same principles here. There's usually a graph. Sometimes there's a little bunny and a turtle. One end goes to fast, one end goes to slow. So you're just going to dial it all the way to one end. Figure out how many clicks are in the entire thing. So you just listen. 2, 5, 6. About 13. So I'm going to back it off to about 6 or 7. Okay, so I feel like my Tech Tuesday video is getting like pretty long. So I'll just talk really briefly about brake lever setup. On a normal, maybe commuter style urban bike, your brake levers get set a lot more flat. You might be sitting more upright. We move around a lot on our bikes, on the trail. So do what's best for you, but having them really flat is usually not a good place to be. If anything, pointing downwards is better, especially when you get on those descents. It's going to help you kind of maneuver your bike a lot better. My bike has these ceramic code brakes on it, and it has a little adjust lever adjuster here. And this is really cool because you can actually change how far the lever is out from your grips and your bar. So right now it's far away. I just dialed it out a bit. But you can actually just make it so it comes in closer. If you find you get a lot of fatigue in your wrists or the back of your hands, you can adjust your levers this way. That's great. So then I'm not having to like extend so much to feather the brake or hit the brakes. I like to ride them a little bit closer, kind of almost till they're touching. The brakes are working. It might feel like it's just too close or something, but really once you get used to it, it feels a lot better, especially on long rides and long descents. Going to the seat post. Quick note about dropper posts. So I just want to talk about this quickly, setting your saddle height. It'll feel in the store, probably, if you're not used to like this style of bike yet, that this is really high and that you're like leaning over quite a bit. And that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. Basically, you want to get really good power transfer on your climbs. Having this too low, you won't get the proper extension. So when we're pedaling, we want to just come down to the bottom of the pedal stroke and just have like a micro bend in your knee, not fully locked out. So when this is at the highest point, that's how your pedaling should be. If your knees are too bent and it's more of a fit thing and your legs coming up too high when you're pedaling, it could potentially cause pain and you're just not getting that power transfer. So you can adjust your seat with your handy multi-tool. If you don't have a quick release, it's usually just an Allen key on here. So the reason I want to talk about this is because sometimes based on your inseam, how tall you are, you might have the wrong size of dropper post. This is a good thing to consider and ask your salesperson about if you are looking for a new bike. It's not uncommon for a lot of women to have to go to a shorter one. So our insertion point. This can only go down so far. If you find this too high when your dropper is fully extended and you're feeling unstable, you need to go to a shorter post because this part can only go down so low. Now, alternatively, if you have to put this up really high, this is kind of a problem too. This is where you would need a longer drop in your post. The reason for that is because I'm going to tighten this up to show you. For pressing it, I've got so much post sticking out here, and I really, when I'm riding, want to get my butt over the back tire. That's just kind of defeating the purpose. Like there's still so much in the way. So if you find that you really had to bring that out because you're tall, just consider getting a longer dropper post installed, because then you'll be able to put this insertion piece down lower, which is going to give you way more skill to get your butt over the back end when you're taking those descents. So thank you if you watched that entire thing. I hope that was a lot of good information for you to take in. As always, feel free to call any of the staff at Ridley's at any time, or you can ask me questions or send me messages. I really don't mind. Or put your questions out to any of the other experienced ladies on Spin Sisters. Yeah. Have fun out there. Don't be afraid to play around with your suspension, and see you around.